I want to inform you about a very serious issue in current conservation biology, which is affecting amphibians across the world, which is the spread of emerging infectious diseases. The worst of these being Cytridiomycosis and rhinoviruses, just some of the diseases contributing to the global decline in amphibians. Cytrid, which is short for Cytridiomycosis, is the fungus that causes fungal infections in amphibians. What it basically does, it gets into the epidermal layer of the skin, where it spreads out and makes the skin very tough. Which of course is a big problem for a lot of salamanders because they breathe through their skin, because they're lungless. And what they also do, they absorb water to their skin and their electrolytes. So what Cytrid does is it makes their skin so tough they can't absorb the water anymore. So some of them will suffocate slowly and the others will dehydrate. Another emerging infectious disease in amphibians is rhinovirus, which causes necrosis, leading to swelling of the skin, bleeding and sores. It can also damage the nervous system, resulting in loss of control over limbs, often paralyzing and eventually killing the host.
Well, rhinoviruses are from the family of iridoviruses. They are DNA viruses, and they affect a wide range of species, not just amphibians, but also they can affect fish and reptiles. So they're very promiscuous agents. And they can easily jump from one species to another. The thing is that the water bodies present in the Dutch wildlife are really diverse in nature. So you have the really man-made water bodies, and you also have the natural water bodies. And it's known that in the case of rhinoviruses, the smaller water bodies, so the smaller areas where you have really high numbers of animals, a high concentration of animals, which are obviously tend to be much more in contact because the pond is a lot smaller. That in those places, rhinovirus disease is much more likely to spread and develop than in larger water bodies in which there's a lot more space and there's a lot less likelihood that the species will have contact with each other or that the viral loads will decrease. So it's and of course they are. All these kind of water bodies are present in the Netherlands, and there's also people that have their natural ponds in the backyards of their houses, so it could basically pop up everywhere. And so you have, but certainly the smaller water bodies or the smaller regions that are more confined and that are highly populated are much more at risk, I would say.
These diseases already have had a huge impact here in the Netherlands. Just a couple of years ago, in 2011, almost 96% of the wild fire salamander population was wiped out by a new strain of Cytridiomycosis called Salamander vorans. Only 1 year beforehand, in 2010, an outbreak of rhinovirus in Drenthe caused a die-off of more than 1,000 water frogs. There's also a looming threat of bullfrogs spreading in the Netherlands. Listed as one of the 100 most invasive species, apart from outcompeting the native populations, they also can act as a carrier for diseases like Cytridiomycosis and rhinoviruses, making it a huge risk for spreading diseases in the Netherlands.
Well, it actually has had a negative effect it has caused certainly population declines in a wide range of amphibian species native or endemic to the Netherlands. Most particularly on water frogs, so the Pelophylax species, which covers, I think, I'm not exactly an amphibian expert, but there's three groups of amphibians that group into the Pelophylax group, so called the water frog group, and that's probably what we're seeing is a constantly involved species, but there's also the Lysotriton has certainly been affected as well, the smooth newt. And then you also have involvement of endangered species, which is quite an ecological concern, which is, for example, the spadefoot toad, which is a species endemic to the Netherlands, which is known to be very susceptible to the virus. And there's a lot of programs that are trying to preserve the species or reintroduce it into the wild. So of course there's concern that this virus could have a negative effect on that species. But yeah, a wide variety of animals have been affected by this virus here.
So in conclusion, these are some very nasty diseases affecting some of our rarest and most vulnerable amphibians. But it's not just about them. If we see a decline in amphibians in an ecosystem, we can expect more and more mosquitoes. For a part, this gap might be filled up by bats, but it's hard to anticipate the ecological response. Lately, certain diseases are showing up in places that didn't have those diseases before, especially diseases that are spread through mosquitoes, possibly even malaria.
The spores of the chytrid fungus and the rhinovirus are very resilient and they can remain in the environment for a long time. As well as being accidentally transported and carried by migrating amphibians, humans have a very important
It is well known in certain countries that humans can play a role in the spread of the virus, basically through footwear and non-disinfected material or gear that goes into the water. But it can also just be natural spread and spread by species in which disease doesn't overtly develop, so more carrier species that tend to travel a lot and in between ponds. And obviously human activity also plays a role in the way these animals change from one water body to another.
So we asked the Dutch Research and Knowledge Institute on Reptiles, Amphibians and Fish, RAVON, on their opinion on current Dutch policies to solve the problem.
I think it has to become more concrete. So now it's all very nicely phrased, so we should invest in research and we should try to prevent Bicel from being imported, of course, and we need to screen, but it's all very vague. So now it does have to become more concrete. So, okay, we're going to ban the import in the European Union, for example. But that's going to be the next step. I think when you see when Bicel was first discovered in 2013, I think it's only 2-3 years later, and we have already gone a long way. I think the policy is really reacting rapidly. So I think that it's going very well. Yeah.
So what can be done about this? First of all, on a government level, a ban on the import of salamander species, similar to that implemented in the US recently, could go a long way to preventing the spread and transmission of diseases like salamander vorans. Also, the Dutch government should consider active removal of bullfrog populations where they become established in the Netherlands. Secondarily, the public can play a huge part in mitigating the problem if they're sufficiently aware of both the local amphibian wildlife and also the presence of the disease in their area. Amphibians, especially salamanders, act as indicators of the health of an environment, so when they start to disappear, they act as a red flag. But the monitoring of these diseases cannot be done by researchers alone.
So with regards to the monitoring programs and monitoring outbreaks, what role would you say citizen science and volunteers have played?
Oh, massive. Without them, we wouldn't have known this disease. It's just massively important. There's this, all of a sudden, there's this hype on citizen science, and there's these papers appearing. But RAVON has a monitoring program since 1997, based on citizens, and all the other NGOs have it as well, like SOFON, the birds and the butterflies. Everyone has it. So in the Netherlands, it's very normal because you can't do all this monitoring yourself. But in other countries, it's always the people from universities that do all this monitoring, and everyone is at only a four-year contract or 6-year. So it's very restricted all the time. But we have this continuous monitoring, and because you have these people with apparently enough time to walk into this forest or whatever they're going to, they know the area very well, so they immediately notice when there's something's missing or when something's wrong. So with the fire salamanders, for example, they just say they all of a sudden start seeing these dead animals, and if you only walk there once every 2 years, okay, there's a dead one, so you wouldn't be too surprised, or you might not even notice. But because people spend so much time there, they immediately see, okay, this is wrong. I've never seen this over the last 10 years, so this is really odd. So they can immediately start ringing the bells and pulling the right cord. So citizen science is massively important. Also now, because we want to have this screening over the whole of the Netherlands, like I can't send people working for RAVON just to go out and monitor the whole of the Netherlands. It's just too expensive. So we definitely need everyone in the Netherlands just to report their animals. So yeah.
The distribution of leaflets, information boards and coverage in the local media may go a long way to preventing further transmission and spread of these diseases. In addition to highlighting awareness of the issue, preventative measures also need to be taken. For example, compulsory disinfection of any boots or equipment used in waterways. So if someone is to enter an area which is infected, it's very easy for the viral capsules or for the fungal spores to become caught in mud or water and stick to their boots. When they move from an infected area to another area, they bring the disease with them and may introduce it to waterways where it wasn't previously present. Also, if someone was handling specimens, say they find a toad and they pick it up to help it across the road, and then later on they do the same to another toad they may come across. If that first toad has been infected by chytrid or rhinovirus, they carry those particles over on their hand and they will infect the next specimen they pick up. Disinfection is incredibly important. The use of a mild biodegradable detergent in between handling amphibians and using equipment can go a long way in preventing this transmission. Recognising the characteristic white spots of chytridiomycosis or the symptoms of any other disease requires some knowledge of the local amphibian species present and their normal appearance, especially as these white spots may appear to be natural. Upon finding a dead or infected specimen, it should be reported as soon as possible to local wildlife authorities. So inform your local community about amphibian diseases, research whether it's affected your area, learn how to recognise the symptoms, and start taking responsibility for preserving native amphibian fauna.